We're going to start on in the Naval Hospital in Paris, a little bit of Paris Island, and 100 Pines is my district. And I'm going to let the, y'all want me to introduce y'all? Okay. This is David Bartholomew, and we are not the stars tonight. That's why we're sitting in the audience, because we're learning too. And tell them what your district is.
Hey, like you said, I'm David Bartholomew. It's District 2, which is predominantly out on Ladies Island, parts of downtown Beaufort, parts of St. Helena, and Marine Corps Air Station. I'm excited to be learning a little bit more about this process. I understand it that much, but hopefully I can explain it a lot better after tonight. Thank you.
And York Glover, this telecast is, this workshop is being telecast live, so it's a live broadcast and stuff. I represent District 3. District 3 includes Fripp, St. Helena, Warsaw, Eustis, Cat Island, part of Beaufort, part of Polk Village, come to North Street, and down Bay Street and stuff. And so everything on the south side of 21 is in my district once you pass Walmart, coming to Beaufort. And so that's my district. I had the, also, they wanted to put Harbor Island in my district. I said, no, I'll leave that in the other district. So I don't have Harbor Island. That's my district.
And I have Port Royal, but the three of us decided to do this together, and it will be on the county channel too. So your friends, they can get on our website and they can watch it. So I'm going to let Ms. Sanders start, and she's going to tell you why this is a reassessment year. State of South Carolina does it every 5 years, which is actually a good thing. I know it doesn't sound like a good thing, but it is a good thing. So if y'all, do you want them to hold their questions till the end? Okay. All right. Very good. Thank y'all.
Is this one working? Yes. Okay. Well, again, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure of mine to speak before the citizens of Beaufort County and also to educate everyone. I have a personal passion in taxation. I would just ask the question, how many years I've been with the assessor's office. I've been with the assessor's office this time around because I've been with the Beaufort County Assessor's Office twice, 23 years, and in taxation over 28 years. And so this is a passion that I have. It's not always an easy subject to talk about, but it is we all depend on what we're going to talk about today. So thank you for inviting me, and our new county auditor is here. I'm excited to see him. Yeah.
I know Parks was July 1st, so I'm not here.
Well, the reason why I'm glad he's here, because I will rely a lot on him, because once we get the roles going, I have to turn it over to him and say, here, David. And so thank you for doing, I know we kind of put you on the spot, but thank you. Well, who's? Oh, Jerry. Yes. So thank you. As you can see, my name is Ebony Sanders. I'm the Beaufort County Assessor, and this is our contact information for our office. The QR code I put there, because if you have a couple of pamphlets in the back, grab one of those. You can use your phone to kind of go to our website and browse the different things that we're going to talk about today. But other things that our office offers that you should kind of be familiar with as a taxpayer. I'm going to show a video to kind of ease the whole topic of taxation. And you can get to kind of understand what we do in our department, okay? So let's begin. I hope I can technology work through this. They were helping me a few minutes ago. So here, this is what our topics are going to be today. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. We're going to talk about the duties, my duty as a county assessor, the quadrennial reassessment, that's why we're here today. We're going to talk about ATIs, capping, appeals, special assessments. We're going to even talk about different tax savings that our office and other offices and jurisdictions that they may be able to qualify for. So those are the kind of topics we're going to talk about. It's not the most interesting conversation, but it's an important conversation, especially this year. So here, let's talk about the duties. So I'm going to go into a long list of statutory duties of mine. I'm going to show a video that's on our website that kind of breaks it down simplistically what we actually do. And if you've seen this video, please bear with me. Just kind of go through it.
So there's a lot of misunderstanding about the role of assessors and how they affect the property tax that homeowners pay. When someone hears the term assessor, they seem to think of a scary figure reaching for their wallet. Not so. Assessors don't set tax rates. Assessors don't chase tax dollars. An assessor is interested in fairly determining property values, and they take great pride in it. Property tax is determined by a simple formula. Assessors only affect one of these variables, the value, and they do so with incredible accuracy. Assessors aren't tax collectors or even tax setters. They're just fellow taxpayers, and their primary goal is to make everything fair and equitable. Imagine that you're in a restaurant with two friends. One orders a hot dog, one orders a plate of caviar, and you order a steak. The waiter comes to the table with a total bill of $100, but he doesn't know how much each of you should pay. If everyone paid the same amount, the guy who ordered the caviar might be happy. But what about the guy who ordered the hot dog? Enter assessors. The food is your property. Just like these meals, some people's property is worth more than others. And it's the assessor's job to determine how much each property is worth. That's it. So in the same way the value of these menu items would need to be determined, an assessor places value on properties to ensure fairness and equity. After the assessor determines the value of each property, local governing bodies will set their budgets for the coming year. They set the tax rate in order to produce the dollars needed for their budgets. The value of a property does not affect the amount of property tax needed. The sum total of all those budgets is a set number that has to be divided up among all the property owners. So even if everyone's value was cut in half by the assessors, the tax rate will be raised in order to generate the same amount of tax revenue. The assessors don't determine the taxes you pay. They just determine the values of properties to keep everything as fair and equitable as possible. When you notice a change in your property's assessed value, that change is the result of a never-ending quest for fairness and accuracy. Assessors are graded on their performance, so there is a detailed system to get accurate valuations. First, the assessor looks at similar properties that have sold, their sale prices, and the terms and conditions of each sale. That's the reason your home won't just be compared to the place next door. Studying things like square footage, age, and location helps assessors determine how comparable another property is to yours. Even seemingly small details, like an extra bathroom or finished basement, can result in significant differences in value in two otherwise identical homes. Assessors maintain a thorough database of real estate information to make this process as precise as possible. Changes in value are typically the result of local real estate market sales or major changes to a property. Remodel a kitchen or finish your basement, and your property's value could increase. When you see your home's assessed value, you can rest assured that the number has not been drawn out of a hat, nor generated with anything but equity and accuracy in mind. Long story short, assessors are here to help, not trying to hinder. Their focus is accurate values, not tax collection. The only things an assessor chases are fairness and equity, and they take great pride in it.
Thank you. Let's see if I can, so those will start. Okay, so we set the foundation of what the assessor's office do and what we do not do. And it's a very simplistic video. We're about valuation. There are exemptions that we work with, special assessments that we work with, but the basis for our department, the assessor's office, is to determine value. And that value is used to determine how much is needed to run government and to set rates and those type of things. But our office, we are not involved with those things, but we have to establish the value, which is the beginning of the whole process, the taxation process. So here, we're going to talk about quadrennial. This is why we're here today, the quadrennial reassessment. The last one we had was in 2018 when we implemented So here we are in 2023. Now, everything that we talk about in, with regards to the assessor's office is statutory driven. So what we do is based on the South Carolina Code of Law. We have to follow the Code of Law. And the reassessment is one of those codes that we have to follow. The reassessment basically is equalization program. You saw that in the video where we're trying to make fairness and equity. So that's what, and this is what quadrennial reassessment does. The reassessment is based on an effective date. So this, remember that as we go through the presentation, you're going to hear me say effective date, effective date. The effective date for this quadrennial reassessment is 12/31/22. So just keep that in mind. It's not based on what's going on today in the market. We know we're in 23. It's based on what happened as of December 31st of 22. And we use a mass appraisal process. That may be unfamiliar terminology to some people, but what we're doing, we're looking at the group of property, the global amount of properties in Beaufort County, all of them, and we determine the valuation for all of those property, all the properties here in Beaufort. Currently, we have a little over 133,000 parcels in Beaufort County. So as an assessor's office, we have to determine the values for all of those properties, regardless if they sell or do not sell, because we have to come up with the fair market value. So that's why I use that definition. The definition comes from one of the governing agencies that we are responsible under, which is the International Association of Assessment Officials. And this is the definition: the process of valuing a universe of properties, that's all of Beaufort, as of a given date, December 31st, 22, using a standard methodology, mass appraisal process, and employing common data, all the sales, and allowing for statistical testing where we come up. We don't just pull it out of a hat and say, "Oop, that's the new number." We come up, we use testing, and we use data searching to determine the value. Okay, so why do we reassess? Well, we know that we established a state law. We know that. And it's on a 5-year cycle. There's an assessment freeze. We're going to talk more about that. So when the property values are set for the quadrennial reassessment that we're about to engage in, the property values that number will freeze unless there's some changes to the property. Oh, if you decide to add on another room, or you decide to build another section to your home, or just build a whole house, then there's a different situation scenario there. But if nothing changes and we establish the value, the market value and the total value, it freezes until the next reassessment, which is going to be in 2028. So right now we're in 23. So that's what that means, assessment freeze. It freezes the valuation date, and it freezes that value unless something changes. It cures any inequities. Now, we're going to talk about some inequities in future, further along in this discussion. But it's to correct or cure any non-uniformity areas that have occurred. So throughout the time period between reassessment cycle and reassessment cycle, there's non-uniformity that occurs. And so we have to get those things cured. That's what the reassessment does. It brings everybody with the same effective date based on the same market data that we're researching, and it cures those problems. So again, here's the note in red of what the assessment freeze means. It's only broken if something changes, and we're going to talk about those changes. So again, December 31st, you're going to hear me say that a lot. And our scheduling for mail, I should have put 23, so please excuse that error. It's December 31st, nope, that is correct. December 31st, 22 is the effective date of the values that we're placing, that we're going to send out notices for this fall. Okay, so I put that there so we can reiterate the importance of December 31st. So whatever happens in the market currently is not going to be reflected in the valuation that you're going to see this fall. So here's the definition for appraisal model. And I'm not going to read through all the definitions, but this kind of gives you an idea of how we utilize market sales to determine the value. It's not something that we just pull out the house and sit out of a hat or sit there and say, I guess it's this. We do statistical measures, and we base it on laws that are established by the South Carolina Department of Revenue, the International Association of Assessment Officials, also the South Carolina Code of Law, and also case studies or different cases that went before the Administrative Law Court or the Circuit Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, which Beaufort County Assessor's Office and myself included. I had to testify before those different courts before. And we're going to talk more about appeal process in the future, further along in our presentation. So here's an example. It's kind of small, but the example of your assessment notice of what it's going to look like is going to have data on there regarding the size of your property. There's also going to be data on there with regards to the valuation of your property, as well as what the ratio of your property is. We're going to talk about legal residency shortly as well. But this is a quick example of what the notice will actually look like when you receive it. And everything that's on there, we have to place it on there because it's mandated by South Carolina Code of Law. So, we know we have to establish the quadrennial reassessment, and it's based on the fair market value of a property. So, as a taxpayer, you may be wondering, well, my property value is going to go up. There's so much going on in Beaufort County. People are buying and selling, and properties are flipping, and people are coming here and moving here and paying astronomical amounts for property. How's that going to affect me? Since you're going to analyze the sales, and you're going to give us a new value based on market sales, based on what the property was doing as of December 31st of 22, how is that going to affect me? Well, the South Carolina legislation made a law that included the 15% cap because they recognized back in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, that if property values were going up so dramatically before the recession, to protect property owners who do not change or move or do anything, who sit still on their property, who haven't transferred interest, at the time of the quadrennial reassessment, if your property value increases more than 15%, the most you can be taxed on is a 15% increase. So if you go back on your tax bills or your previous assessment notes, if you've been with Beaufort County or lived here or owned property and you haven't sold recently, or just say multiple quadrennials, you may have received up to 3, and this may be your 4th cap. So I'm going to put that in layman's term in a minute. I'm going to give you some definitions. But if your property value at the last quadrennial reassessment, just say last year, because that if you haven't done anything in the last 5-6 years, was $100,000. And people in your neighborhood are deciding to spend $1 million for their property. Guess what? The most you can get taxed on is $115,000. You will see remember I showed you this example notice? You're going to see a market value of $1 million. But it's important to pay attention to that taxable number. That's where your cap number will be at. So instead of at the 100,000, you'll be at 115, even though we said your market value is at $1 million. So sometimes what happens, my taxpayers will come in and they'll see the $1 million, and they're like, Ms. Sanders, this is $1 million. Are you crazy? You know? And we say, well, this is what the market data says, and this is what the sales show, but your taxable amount, what you're getting taxed on is $115,000. And a lot of people say, well, that's all? Yeah, because the law says that if the property values increase more than 15% and you have not made a change, and we're going to talk about the different changes, the most you can be taxed on the quadrennial reassessment is a 15% increase. Just keep that in mind, okay? And that was a protection from the legislation. So here we go, 15% cap. Let's get into some definitions. This is the code. Again, as I said before, everything that we do in the assessor's office is code-driven. So that's important to remember. This is the section that we're looking at here, 1237-3140. It talks about the limited value. You may hear that in other discussions or from other, it's called limited value, but it's a 15% cap. And that's the code. I'm not going to bore you with the entire code, but if you want to take notes, it's 1237-3140. That's where you can find it in the South Carolina Code of Law. Basically, here's the basic definition. It limits the amount the property can be taxed, not at the market value, but the taxable value. And as long as the property does not undergo a transfer of interest, we're going to talk about that. So, for example, if I decide I want to buy Ms. Howard's property, she may have been the beneficiary of the 15% cap. But as the new owner, at the risk, I will not be the beneficiary of the 15% cap. Now, if Mr. Glover decides, I'm going to sit on my house and I'm not going to ever move, I love it on St. Helena. And his house is at $100,000 at the last quadrennial reassessment. He didn't make any major improvements. He didn't change his property. 2023 comes around, his house will be maybe be valued $1 million, but he'll be the benefactor of the 15% cap, which would be at $115,000. It's a complex law, but it's very simple when you kind of break it down. So here, that's the code again, and this is what it basically says, the definition for the limited value. So, taxable cap value. And I put this here because a lot of my taxpayers will receive a cap value, but they'll also receive a part that's not capped. That's possible as well. For example, the land could be capped, but the structure is brand new. It doesn't receive the benefit because there's a change. Remember I said there's some changes? Then it goes on for full value at the time of the quadrennial reassessment. Okay? So the valuation that's placed on that new house, let's say I decide next year I'm gonna build me a big, beautiful new house. Well, the valuation, if I owned the property all that time, wasn't a new purchaser, the valuation is gonna be based on what that house would have appeared to be at 12/31/2022, even though I built it in 24. Okay, so a lot of things moving around there with this number. But it's very simple that there is a possibility that a person can be the beneficiary of a cap and a non-cap on their property. That's why it's important to seek our advice when you get that assessment notice. What am I looking at here? What is this about? What do these numbers mean? It's important to question it, and that's why we're having these sessions. Okay, and that's the Act 388, which is, I was right, 2006. That's when the legislators actually brought that law alive. So, assessable transfer of interest. A few minutes ago, I mentioned for property transfer, like I bought Ms. Howard's property. That's what we consider an accessible transfer of interest. So, the way I explain it is, your property is accessible once you give it to somebody else, sell it to somebody else. Okay, so we're gonna reassess it when it transfers interest. So you get a deed done and you transfer it to someone else. We're gonna automatically reassess it. With the accessible transfer of interest, keep this in mind, that the effective date of the quadrennial reassessment does not apply. Okay? So here's what it is. What is an accessible transfer of interest? Well, you'll see that I'm gonna kind of break it down again. It's based on December 31st of the year of the transfer. So let's use our example again. I purchased Ms. Howard's house this year in 23. The law says that next year, the property is going to be revalued based on sales that occurred in 23, not based on the quadrennial. No capping, I lost the capping, I got a new effective date, and that property is reassessed. In a non-reassessment year, the whole entire county is not reassessed. It's only those properties that had a change, a transfer of interest, a new construction, a split. These type of properties will lose their cap. Make sure how far am I gone? Oh, it's going on me. So, we'll see that individuals this reassessment cycle that transferred in 22, we have quite a number of people because we know the activity in Beaufort County there's been a lot of real estate activity in our county. We've been blessed to have that. Those individuals will not benefit from the cap. They will not receive a cap on their property. They will go on for full market value as of December 31st of 22. Everyone else, if their property value went up more than 15%, they will be the benefactors of up to a 15% increase. Okay? So here's some more about the ATI law. I also like to tell my taxpayers that in the language of the law, for many years, since 2006, the verbiage that has been floating around through different entities about the ATIs and accessible transfer of interest, what that is ATIs, but is point of sale, or you must put it at my sale price. So I use the analogy, if I paid $1 for something, is it really worth $1? So that's the sale price, though. If my sale to her is $1, and she accepted that $1 for her house, I got a house and she got $1. So that being said, there's nothing in the code that says point of sale. There's nothing in the code that says that we must use the sale price. The code does say it's based on the fair market value as of an effective date. So I like to put that out there because a lot of people, and if the sale price makes sense, we'll go right to the sale price. We have gone back to it. It's not uncommon. But I tell my taxpayers that because a lot of times we'll have individuals say, well, my sale price was only, and you went above that. Well, we can go above it, below it, or keep it the same. Okay? So basically, that's why I put that there. But remember, it's based on the fair market value. Not all transfers are considered ATIs. So, for example, if a transfer happened between a husband and a wife, that's not an ATI. If a transfer happens if a property is at 4% or legal residency, and the property went from a parent to their child and the parent is deceased, it's not an ATI. So there's certain things in the South Carolina Code of Law that prevents property from being reassessed where it should not be reassessed. And that's why, again, you need to have those conversations with the assessor's office and say, hey, this property went up. I mean, what's going on here? Explain this to me. Why did I get this assessment notice? So the appeal process. So with all that we do in the assessor's office, the code allows our taxpayers to appeal. You can appeal, when I showed you that assessment notice, you can appeal everything on the face of that assessment notice. Everything. You can even say, I don't like this, it's too high. Get those two. We need a little bit more than that. Help us out here. But you can appeal. And appealing is important because the legislation gives you that right. If you receive an assessment notice, it's very time sensitive. Remember that. It's 90 days from the date of that assessment notice. Once that 90-day window is passed and you come back to the assessor and say, I disagree with the value, then Ms. Sanders is going to have a hard conversation with you, and she's going to say, the South Carolina Code of Law says so-and-so and so-and-so, and the Code of Law says, no, you waived your right to appeal for that year. Now, that's if you receive an assessment notice. If you have not received an assessment, and years of not receiving an assessment notice, you have until January 16th to January 15th to appeal the whole year. So just keep that in mind. So this year is important because 133,000 parcels are going to receive assessment notice. And each one of those property owners have 90 days to appeal. Keep that in mind. Otherwise, if you come in after the appeal deadline, because it's on there, Ms. Sanders is going to say, well, I'll hold your appeal for 24, but for 23, you can't consider it. So, and here's what the law that says that. But let's talk about the appeals. So, taxpayers can feel everything pretty much on the face of that notification. You can appeal your market value. You can appeal your special use value. You can appeal your size of your acreage. You can appeal anything on the face of that value on that assessment notice. Just trying to keep that in mind. Point again, 90 days. Keep that in mind, 90 days. So, and if it's a reassessment year and you do not receive a notice, then you have until January 16th to January 15th to appeal. So this is another, again, it's kind of repetitive, but I just don't want to stress it so much how important these assessment notices are. If a taxpayer appeals, you can't exercise both rights. So this year, everyone is under the same 90-day window, so it's not an issue where you can say, well, I have until January 15th to appeal because I can exercise that right. You can't exercise both. If you got the notice, then you have 90 days. If you did not get a notice, then you have the calendar year. So you got one or the other. Everything that we talked about regarding the reassessment is online. We have an updated reassessment guide. That is the QR code for it. If you go to the QR code in the pamphlet that I have on the table there, it'll take you right to the assessor's office website, and you'll see where it'll say 23 reassessment guide. So it's there for you. And then that's the link there. So this is another important topic. I know we're here to talk about reassessment, but since I have everyone's ears, I kind of want to squeeze this in if it's okay. Legal residency, also known as 4%. Everybody calls it 4%. Okay, so here we're going to talk about that briefly. It's important. There is a tax break for property owners that are full-time residents that's claiming their property as their residency. If you own the property, it is in your name. If you're domiciled there, you're more than likely to meet the qualifications. What I tell my taxpayers is that this is very time sensitive as well. The 90-day assessment notice window does not apply here. A taxpayer has from January 16th to January 15th to apply for the entire year for this exemption. I will say this, I'm surprised, it's a state law. I am surprised often of how many of my taxpayers who've been in Beaufort County for many, many, many years and do not have the legal residency. I tell my taxpayers, if all else fail, put the application in. What are we gonna tell you? You don't have it, what you gonna lose? I mean, so please put it in. We will walk you through what we need to walk you through to help you understand. If you're not qualified for it, we'll help you understand why you're not qualified for it. I will also share this, because we do have quite a number of people probably listening. What we have a situation, a lot of heirs property here in Beaufort County. And typically what happens when I have a discussion about legal residency, I'm gonna use myself for example. My family owned property in Early Branch. Probably can hear the southern drawl, but my family owned property in Early Branch, and my grandfather's property was heirs property. He has a house on that property that he's passed away. My uncle lives on the property, and he lives in my grandfather's house. The property's in my grandfather's name, but my uncle, being an heir of my grandfather, can obtain and get legal residency. You have to meet certain qualifications, but you can get the legal residency. I did a form with Mr. Glover, and talked to some of the people in his district, and they came up to me and they were saying, well, my brother's been at my mom's house all these years. And I'm like, we gotta get this out. We gotta get this out to the public. If all else fails, put the application in and then let us tell you no. Okay, it's not gonna hurt. It's just spit it in. Because it's a lot of people. And also, I like to tell you that the law allows for 2 years of refunds in the arrears. Keep that in mind. So if I didn't qualify today, if I qualify today and I can prove residency 2 years ago, you can get a refund for 2 years in arrears. There's a statute that covers that as well. I really would like, and if you do have it, or you know people in your community, your neighbors, your church members, help them, just kind of share it, spread it, because we want people to apply for it. It's a great benefit, and I'm going to show you the benefit of it in a minute. So here's kind of what I said. This is tax savings. You got to qualify for it. It's not automatic. We don't just automatically give it to you. You got to qualify for it. We have to vet the individual as they apply. And there's a deadline, so I kind of explained the deadline. Let's kind of keep going here. So let's talk about how much. So we probably wonder, well, how much can I actually save? Well, here, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's kind of small. But I can kind of explain it to you. There's 2 sample properties that I pulled, and both properties are valued at over $500,000. One property on my right, without the legal residency, because it's more than a 2% difference. Their tax bill is $7,612. They did not get the legal residency on their account. A similar property that's over $500,000 does have the legal residency, and it's $2,900. I'm not sure about you, but I like the $2,900 versus the $7,000. See, I demonstrate this because you can see that it's more than a 2% difference. What the savings is for you as a taxpayer if you qualify for the legal residency is the school operation mills. Taxpayers who are qualified for the legal residency are exempted from the school operation mills. So, again, if you look at your tax bill and you get your assessment notice, it's going to have it on there 4/6. You can only get on the place that you dwell in, and you have to provide an application to our office to prove eligibility. But if all else fails, you get the notice and you want to ask questions, call our office. Come by. We have two locations currently. Come by our office. I'd rather for you to apply than not to apply. Okay, so what are the qualifications to qualify for this tax break? Well, we're gonna ask you to put an application in. Oh, no. What is required? Well, I left a slide out. Well, we're gonna ask you to put an application in. You're gonna have to provide some documentation, your driver's license, if you have, or South Carolina ID. If you don't have a driver's license, okay, we take South Carolina IDs. Your South Carolina most recently filed South Carolina tax return. We're also gonna look for vehicle registration. If you do not have a car, that's okay. There's other things that we can ask you for. You can apply online on our website. Even that QR code I show you, if you pick up the pamphlet, it also breaks down to some of the things you'll need to provide to our office. But just go to our website, and it's read that you can apply online 24/7. You don't have to come to the office unless you just want to come visit us. But everything is there. So, what other discounts do we have in our office? Here, we talked about the legal residency. Agriculture use, that's another one. If you have property that you may think that's qualified for ag use, it's a similar filing deadline as the legal residency. If all else fails, put the application. And that's one of the simplest applications of all of our applications. Put it in. Let us deny you, or let us explain to you why you don't qualify. I'd rather for you to put it in. With the agriculture use, you cannot go back 2 years. It's a little bit more difficult to go back. But it's very important to get it in on time. Multi-lot discount is mostly for developers, and I put that here just in case we have some developers online that's listening. And the 6% property exemption special assessment, or the accessible transfer of interest, okay, let's go back to our sale that we have between us, our dollar sale. If I decide not to claim the property as my primary residence, I want to have a second home in South Carolina and come and visit. Well, if the property values exceed a certain amount, I may qualify for this 6% property exemption, and there's an application for that as well. That is for non-legal residents, property owners that's not claiming their property as their primary residence. So if I have 3 properties and I live in one, and the other 3 are properties I just transferred or just purchased, I can get that type of exemption on the other 3 properties. I will say this, when this is one of the newer laws, when that came on the books, in Beaufort County, we were seeing 10 applications a year. Because of all the activity in real estate, last year, we received over 500 applications for this exemption. It's a lot of applications. Basically, if the property value exceeds a certain amount, they're only gonna pay up to 75% on that, 75% of the value. Mm-hmm. Exempt, which one? So the legal residency or the 6% exemption?
Well, it's, for instance, if I own a property,
Mhm.
and I have already applied, I call it a homestead exemption.
Okay.
Is that correct? But then there's a second piece of property that I own, that's a rental unit.
Okay. So let me break your question. You have a lot of good stuff in your question. So I have Mr. Cad here with me. Okay, so in South Carolina, we call the legal residency. Other states call it homestead exemption. And homestead exemption is age specific, and that's Mr. Cad's arena. So that's done for age, and that's through him. And but the legal residency, what I'm talking about, does not have an age restriction on it. That is correct. So you don't have to worry about being a certain age to get that. You just make the application. If that's your home and you're living in it and you claim it as your primary, and you can demonstrate through the documents that we request from you that that's your primary residence, then that's a separate situation than the one Mr. Cad as the county auditor is over, which will be as age restricted for 65 and older. That's applied through that office, the auditor's office. Now, with regards to the 6% property exemption, so let me explain it like this. You see where we had the 2 bullet points? The first one says 4% at the top.
Yes, right.
Then you have the one that says 6%. The 4% people cannot benefit from the 6% property exemption, and the 6% property people cannot benefit from the 4% exemption. So the 4% is for legal residency, the 6% is for all the others. Basically what happened, legislation understood that, hey, with the increase, they wanted to give the ATI individuals a tax benefit or a tax break as well. So if you, with your rental property, so you just, say you just bought it last year. You bought your rental property last year. You'll put an application in, and this time specific, is a date, it's time sensitive with this application. You put the application in to us to receive this exemption, and if the property value increase over a certain threshold than what we had on the books, not what you paid for it, what we had on the books, then we will allow an exemption for a certain amount of it, and the proportion of it is exempt out, and you don't pay on it. So it's about how much the valuation is and how much it's going to be, and if it's over a certain amount, you're going to be exempted out of that extra, if that makes sense.
That would be beneficial for me to file such an application.
I always tell my taxpayer, put it in. You know, put your applications in, let us have the discussion. Yes, it's not an old code, it's one of the newer codes, but it's been evolving. It's so, I wouldn't say new. We've had recent court cases with regards to the ATI exemption that the Department of Revenue is constantly trying to give us guidance on, because we had some recent cases. So I tell my taxpayers, put the application in for anything that we may offer, and then allow us to have that conversation with you if we need either additional information or you do not qualify. We will give you an explanation why or what you can do to qualify. So we'll have those conversations.
Because you're on the topic of the 6, I was gonna wait to the end, but just so you're on it now. What if the additional home someone has is an inheritance that is now heirs property, but it's a building there and they're using it otherwise? Like, that's not where they're living, because they're living where they were living. But they inherited the second building now.
Right.
So what happens there?
They can, yeah, that's an excellent question. The reason why it's excellent, because it's in your question, the property is received as heirs. So I'm gonna use my family. My grandfather, this property is heir property, but it was clear title for whatever my aunts and uncles decide that they're gonna deed it to me.
Right.
It's considered an assessable transfer of interest.
Okay.
It's gonna get reassessed because it's not from dead parent to child. I'm a grandchild, or I'm just just say I'm a cousin. Okay, so it's gonna get put on for full market value based on December 31st of the transfer. Under the ATI, the 6% exemption, they will qualify for it. So just say it's sold for $10 love and affection.
Right.
Okay, we're not looking at the sale price. Well, yeah, they'll get the exemption. We're not looking at the sale price. We're looking at what the assessor's office had on the records the prior year and what is coming on the records for the next year. And the exemption is going to be determined if it meets the qualification for the exemption. A portion of that extra is going to be exempt. They're not going to pay taxes on the extra. That's how that works. I hope, did I explain that okay?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
That's not retroactive though.
With the no, because under the most recent case, there was a case, Fairfield Waverly versus Dorchester County. The judge established that under that, because it went over to the South Carolina Supreme Court, they established that you cannot go backwards. The whole point is to go forward. Now, we have quite a number of our taxpayers who are receiving the exemption currently. And what's going to happen for those individuals at the time of the reassessment, it's been established in this court hearing that the exemption falls off. However, their new taxable number is the exemption plus the 15% cap. So it's a benefit for this exemption if you qualify for it. Now, I will say this, if the property owner claims that property as their primary residence at any time, the exemption goes away. Because you can't receive a 6% exemption on the 4% property. Yeah, I know it's a lot. It's a lot. Hope I explained that okay. There are some other governmental exemptions that I wanted to kind of put up there for our public to see. We have disability exemption. I think that's through South Carolina Department of Revenue. Am I correct? And we have the veterans exemption through South Carolina, disabled veteran exemption through the South Carolina Department of Revenue. If they tell us your property is exempt, we don't ask any questions. We just put on the percentage that they tell us. If they tell us 50%, we will give you 50%. And you cannot appeal these exemptions because they're not through our office. They're through these other regulatory agencies. The homestead exemption, Mr. Cad's office, he'll regulate that. Again, you can't appeal that, whatever, that'll be through his office. Our office does not handle those. But the ones on the top, we actually do. Okay, important dates. Here we go, 16, remember we talked about January 16th through January 15th for the legal residency. That goes for the agriculture use exemption as well. And the multi-lot and the 6% exemption on two different schedules. And that's on our website. I didn't include them on the slide, maybe I should have, but they're actually on our website. And you can actually grab the pamphlet and go to our website and find those dates. Objection, unless it's a 90-day window and you get an assessment notice, you can appeal the entire year. So let's see what I have here. Office locations, we have one here in Beaufort, one in Bluffton. We do not have the Hilton Head office any longer, so we're just in the 2 locations, and our information is here as well. It's on our website. So here's my contact information. I'm not going to bore y'all any further, but I'd like to share that with y'all, so how you can get in contact with our office. And if you need to call our office and speak to me directly, I'm the only Ebony that I'm aware of in this building. Okay, she was first. Well, thank you.
Does the 15% cap apply to anybody paying 6% as well?
Well, I would say the 15% cap, yes, that's for everybody. That's not governed based on if you're a legal resident or non-legal residency. What it's based on is that if you haven't had a transfer interest in 22, now anyone in 21 and held on their property all this time, you're going to get a 15% cap if your property value increased more than 15%. I can reveal this, majority of properties with this reassessment is going to get a 15% cap. Very, very few will not.
And then the other thing is rollback taxes.
Good, okay, good question. Rollback taxes only occur under certain circumstances. Agricultural use, if you change the use of the property, is subject to be rollback. The legislation changed on that. It's a good thing. They went from 5 to 3. They did, yep, they changed from, now let me give you a tip about that. So you have a property and you want to build a house on your property. So we're going to roll back only on the portion that the use changed, unless the whole entire thing that is the use change on the whole property. So you have just say a 20-acre tract, and you pull the 1 acre out to build a house on it, we're going to roll back on that 1 acre. My recommendation, if you know you're going to do something to your property and change the use, and you know it's going to be 3 years from now, come to us and say, hey, take my ag use off 1 acre, pay at the 6%, and guess what? There's not a rollback tax at that point. But you have to plan it. Or if you do it within the 3 years, whatever's left for the 3 years. So you thought, okay, I thought I was going to do it 3 years, but I guess I did 2. We're only going to roll back on whatever's remaining of the 3. So trying to do some pre-planning. If I tell my taxpayers, if you know you're going to do something, try to pre-plan it. Come to us and say, just remove that. We're not going to ask you any questions while you're removing it. We're just going to take the ag use off of it. But there are taxpayers that do incur a rollback tax on their property because they decide they have to do something to their property. It's what it is. But there's a 3 versus a 5. It's no longer a 5-year rollback. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Miss.
Yeah, how you, couple questions. How many acres for ag, so the discount? How many acres are you required to have? Do you have a whole bunch more of these?
Yes, I do. Take the whole stack. I have over 1,000 upstairs.
And then if we have a session on the island, do you come out to the community? Okay, good. Because that means if I bring my computer, for instance, to the church, I can sign up a bunch of people on your website, right?
Yeah,
Easy.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Now, I will say this, what my plans are as the county assessor, I've shared this before, I'm not sure if I shared with the council, but my plans is once we send out assessment notices, what I would like to do is, my plan is to have a delegation of individuals on a schedule to go around to the different libraries around the county, because everybody is not comfortable with technology and using computers. And they have that question, they have to have that face-to-face contact. So we're going to do a schedule, and I'm going to have a delegation of individuals from my department, appraisers, legal residency, and mapping. And they're going to be at this location. We're going to have it set up where it doesn't, you can come and just walk in, you don't have to make an appointment. But however, if a person does make an appointment, they will have first priority because they have a standing appointment, but we're not going to turn anybody away. Okay, so that's my goal. It's gonna be throughout the county on a schedule.
Gotcha. When does this come out?
The assessment notes will be mailed in the fall. So we're looking at the first week in September.
Okay.
Okay? I try to do everything before, I don't like, this is just a personal thing, I don't do nothing on 9/11 with regard to notices. That to me is a special day, so it'll be before 9/11 or right after 9/11. She has a comment, yes.
You didn't ask her to answer a question.
Oh, I apologize. I'm coming. Okay, so if I mess up the acreage, please forgive me. It's 10 and 5. 10 and 5. 10, I'm not sure if crop is 10 and 5 is timber, or 5 is 10. Yeah, I get it mixed. I get it mixed up. Timber. 5 is timber. And yeah. Now, keep in mind, timbering is not a tree. People think timber is a tree. Not a tree. Okay? Because people tell you, well, Miss Sanders, you can have Christmas trees and you can still get agricultural use. Also, there's a portion of the code that says that if you do not meet the minimum qualifications, for example, you don't meet the 5 or 10 qualification, and if you have, you can show that you file with the state, I think it's $1,000 worth of farm income over a certain period of time. Not say every year, it's like 3 or 5 years, we can give you the agricultural use if you don't meet the minimum acreage requirements. Additionally, the code allows if you have one qualifying tract, all your other tracts qualify. Something to remember. Do I need to bring you the mic or you're good?
No, I'm good, thank you. If a property owner plans to appeal their market value assessment, what type of information is the office looking for? Do you need a current appraisal? I mean, what type of information is required to submit that?
Okay, good question. There's not a requirement of type of information. We don't tell you what not to give us. Remember I said the example of how people around there too high? The law doesn't say you must provide blah. The law says you have a right to appeal, and we shall do this. What I tell my taxpayers is the law does, not only the law, but the courts have upheld that the assessor's office is right until proven otherwise. So help me help you. If you, for example, you just say too high, what are you helping us with? I mean, we got to give us something to help you. If you have an appraiser report, I don't want people to feel that they have to go out and hire a fee appraiser to incur that cost unnecessarily. If you have one, provide it. That's up to, if you feel like you need to go get one, get it. We're going to take all information. There are times when we'll ask you, do you have an appraiser report? Do you have something to prove it? Now, let me share one thing with you. On our website, please use our website. There's a little box on this that says Property Max. You can do your own research of sales on our website. You can go there. It's an excellent instructional video. We have 3 videos. I call them my Netflix series. I'm about to add more to it. And my deputy assessor, Milton Boswell, he is navigating through how to search sales. It is free. I can't look into the camera much to tell everybody. You can do your own research. You can apply for these exemptions. There's no cost. It's free. There are people out there that sell services. That's okay. That's their business. But know that it's free. Okay? And it's out there for you. Did I answer all your questions? Who's? Yes, sir.
Establish market value on new construction.
What we do is we look at sales. There's 3 approaches to value. So let's look in your scenario that we're talking about residential, correct? Because commercial's a little different. My commercial person's back there. he's okay, but we're going to look at residential. We look at what the market is telling us. We are reflectors of the market. So we look at properties that are similar that's sold to determine the valuation of the property that we determine the value on. So if you have a new construction, the valuation that's in our system that's coming up, we develop tables. And the tables are based on sales that occurred. Once a new construction comes on in the non-reassessment years, it reflects back to the valuation that we have established in our tables for that type of property. So we look at square footage. We look at what if you got a house that's built out of one type of material versus another type of material, there's cost associated with that. I go back to there's the 3 approaches to value. You got your cost approach, your sales comparison approach, and your income approach. In those approaches of value, we know income is not going to work because that's commercial. Cost approach is one of those, it has depreciation that has to be determined. But the law says we have to determine the fair market value. So we got to go to the market. And whatever the market tells us, we reflectors of the market.
So that's the comparison you talked about then.
Correct. Correct.
I have a second question. About the 65 plus and that $50,000 deduct on the assessed value, at what point does that occur? If you turn 65 in the middle of the year, where does that fall?
I will say this. I would suggest contacting the county auditor's office to answer that question because I will get that answer wrong. I don't determine ag, and that's for homestead exemption based on age. So I think I'm pretty knowledgeable of it, but I don't want to answer wrong, and it's not under my purview. So look under their website, and the auditor's office will handle that. You had a question?
Yes, this is a little bit of an awkward question,
Oh.
but I'll take it here. How does one bring to the attention of the assessor a house that has been constructed and never acknowledged on the real property rolls?
Okay, we have an anonymous tip line on our website. You can drop it there. If you want to put your name in there, wonderful. But we have and people do use it to report such things. They report property owners that are renting their property. They report a lot of stuff. So yes, and guess what we do? We investigate it. Yeah. Yeah.
It looks like the reassessment notice is gonna have the same information that's on the public real estate records from your office.
One more time, can you rephrase this question?
Right now, if you go to your office,
Mhm.
you can access the real property from an address, a name, that sort of thing.
Correct.
It sounds like the information that's on there is just gonna be repopulated in your reassessment notice. How do we know what went into those original numbers and whether that was legitimate? Is there any more detail that's available to the homeowner?
What you'll have to do at that point, I would suggest you to appeal. When you appeal, you will meet with an appraiser. Appraiser will either contact you by phone or set up a meeting with you. Then you will go, at that point, it's more individualized with how do we establish the valuation for your property. And you will have that conversation with them based on sales that they've used, what data they use, what statistical analysis they use to develop the valuation that's specific to your property. So no, it's not there. It's not, to be honest with you, the whole website that we have available is very robust. We have one of the best ones around I've ever seen. But it's not required by law. The law doesn't say that we have to have all the information that we have out there. So it's not no different than us having their analysis out there for your individual property. That's why we have Property Max there for you to do analysis. You can do your own analysis based on properties in your neighborhood to determine whether or not the number that we've established is correct or not. But at the end of the day, that's why it's important to contact us or to appeal it so we can have that one-on-one conversation to explain to you what we use or what you think it should be.
What about then the application for building permits that may modify that? How does that get factored into your reassessment?
Okay, so building permits. So we know that building permits is done through the Building and Codes Department. Building permits come on any new construction occurs the year after the CO is issued. So if it was CO'd in 22, it comes on for the first time in 23. All that new construction is based on our tables that we've established based on the market data. So they will go on based on 12/31/22 if the CO was issued in 22. And it'll come on for the first time in 23 based on that sale data in 22. Yes, ma'am.
So the final question, that was really my first question, is, I liked the video in the beginning because I thought it was very simplex, so applause to the folks. I edit a lot, so I like that. But my concern was this. I'm gonna give somewhat of a real example. So someone bought a piece of property for multi-millions of dollars that is less than a mile away from other people's homes that are roughly assessed probably from $50,000 to maybe $150,000. So this happened within the same last year. So now what will happen, even though that video said, we don't just use who's next door to you, we're using the county essentially to kind of, come up with how this assessment goes. But what happens, is it very likely that the people who are the closest to this new multi-million-dollar purchase are gonna see tax increases?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Let me explain. The county is our subject. I'm gonna go the long way around. The county is our subject. As appraisers, unlike fee appraisers, we can't turn down an assignment. We would not take a property in St. Helena, for example, and use something out of Hilton Head. That's not comparable sales. So let's isolate it to Beaufort, the city of Beaufort and around this area here. It would not make sense for us to go to Sheldon to use a property value here in Beaufort. We use like properties with similar characteristics and locations to determine the valuation. So that being said, let's look at a property, let's think about a property in Bluffton. We have subdivisions in Bluffton, okay? The market for those properties is in that PUD. That's its market. That's its neighborhood. If it's outside of that PUD, not necessarily they're part of that. They don't reflect the buyers and sellers in that neighborhood. We're reflectors. Now, if you got two properties that are side by side and one is performing differently than everybody else in the community, then that's an outlier. We may not necessarily use that one. I'm gonna give an example. In my time here at Beaufort County as an appraiser, I have a property owner in Hilton Head. I'm not gonna name the property owner. I went to their property. They did a Taj Mahal. It's not in the subdivision. They did a Taj Mahal. This gentleman was so proud. He just walked me through the whole house. I mean, he had stuff imported from all over the place. He was not in a PUD. But everyone around him, this house was 3 stories tall. Everyone around was ranch style, for one level, been there since the 60s. He was not uniform with everybody else. He was the outlier. Does that $1 million sale example make sense with the other sales that's going on in the community? As appraisers, we're analyzing these sales. Does it make sense? Is it uniform? Is it a reflecting of what the other sales or other properties are selling, buying and selling? Is it typical of the market? Go back to the dollar sale. You can have a dollar, everybody else doing $300,000. We're not going to use everybody, put everybody $1. We're going to use what the market, we're reflectors of the market. The market leads us where we have to go. That being said, we don't necessarily going to go into one community and say, we're going to use that as your value, use those sales to value a rural piece of property. That's not good appraiser practice. So there's certain practices that come up with this statistical number that we could develop.
And that's the equity that was built in the video.
Right. We're trying to, making everything, fairness and equity, correct. You're welcome. Any other questions for me? And I am open for appointments. I am. Please come. You know what you'll do is I can give you my information, and the gentleman that sets my appointments up, and he'll put you on the schedule with my appointments because he keeps me straight. And yes, we can sit down and have a long discussion.
You may have said it, the 15% cap and the transfer title. Does the cap go with the transfer if it's within the family?
Okay, so let's look at it like this. If the property, you and I are transferring between each other and we're relatives.
Right.
You're not my father, you're just, I'm your niece. It doesn't transfer. The law doesn't allow that. It's gonna be a complete ATI full market value. Okay?
But how about my son?
If you pass away and your property's at 4% and you gave it to your son, it is not a cap. The cap remains and it's not reassessed.
Okay.
Or it's not considered an assessable transfer of interest.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I got it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm kind of in that, what happened, my mom died in 2000, she had a living trust.
Okay.
She died in 2017. Property was placed in my name in 2018, when I did
Right.
all of that. So when you were talking about that 5-year time frame, where
Right.
all of that was a little bit confusing to me, because I'm trying to think about how long I had this property, how long I had this property,
Let's look at it, because what I tell my taxpayers is this. We do not know family dynamics. We don't know names. We don't know the relationships. So, for example, my last name is Sanders. My maiden name was Williams. If my mother was passed away and give me her house, how would the assessor's office know that I'm a Williams? We don't know so that's why the assessment notice is so important. And you appeal the question and say, what is this? Because like with your situation, we can talk about it, let's look at it, because it may not have been it should not have been a true ATI. And we really need to look at it because we can make that adjustment to reflect that currently.
Because let me tell you what was being paid for taxes before,
Yeah.
5 times.
Yeah. And mom could have had, could I say mom? Mom could have had legal residency. Mom could have had homestead exemption. Mom could have had a cap on a cap on a cap. And all that went away when mom passed away. So let's bring it in. I'm gonna get you the information. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna dissect your tax bill, okay? And I open that up to anyone that wanna do that. If it's not with me, someone in my staff, they are qualified and excellent. We will just dissect your information to see if everything makes sense, okay? Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you.
Oh, you
I want to thank you because you've helped some of my constituents, especially widows. Their spouse will pass away and then they get this notice and they're already depressed, and you have spent so much time helping them over the years in your office. So thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Y'all, thank you for coming.
And thank the 3 of you for hosting us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Y'all want to say anything else?
No, I would just say this about Ms. Sanders. She does have very professional, knowledgeable staff members in her office. And she's helped me tremendously in all the areas with her staff in her office. So she's willing and she's open, use her up. And we appreciate you coming and have a good night. Good evening.
There's 3 things over there.